Charles Caldwell, EN3. Led into the military because my father and I got in an argument. But so I went down the next day and joined. Got sent to Great Lakes for boot camp. First night that we got there, they gave us a ball cap. Not a ball cap, a stocking cap and gloves and a shovel. Said, get out there and shovel the walkways. That would have been in '64. I can remember shoveling the snow. We had our times. We, as you know, we go for the athletic thing with them. Our group, our division, we tied the other group for first place for the flag. Well, one of our guys, the only reason we did it because he came down the rope, we was doing rope climb. He came down the rope and didn't hand over hand, he slid all the way down, tore all the skin off his hands. Hey, I went to one of the officers and said, could one of us do it twice? Which would have been me. And they said, no, we won't allow that. So the other team got the flag for the competition. But yeah, we had good times, rough times. But then from there, I went to San Diego to the, I think it was called the Nellis, a subtender, one of the old ones. And I was only assigned there because I was going to A school. And so I went to A school for welding. Spent my time there, finished my A school, come back, and that's when we got ready and flew from there to Bremerton, Washington to pick up the lake. Before we got there, just as we was bringing her out of dry dock, and served up there and until we stuck aboard ship and everything. Stood watch there on the pier because at that point I was still just a fireman. I had a pier watch. Cold, miserable, froze my toe. But I guess I could say it. So we left out, was headed for Hawaii when we got a distress call. I'm sure the other guys probably told you. They, I think it was a destroyer. One of their guys got sick. So we went to that ship, or they came to us, and at that point I was on watch. I had lifeboat duty watch. So I was an engineer on the lifeboat. That they came and they had to cross the lines and bring the guy from their ship across as we're still traveling across the ocean, which was a neat thing to see. But our captain was, you know, it messed him up. He says, you know, you're messing with our shakedown cruise. But anyway, we got him over and then we went on to Hawaii and spent the day in Hawaii and then took off and came back to Bremerton. And from there, we got ready and loaded the ship and everything. And took off, went around through the Panama Canal, which they didn't know whether we was going to get to go through or not because of our size. So it was, and the weather, of course, but if we didn't, we was going to have to go down around the bottom. Well, we went through the canal, but as we came out on the other side, as we started up the coast, I'm up on duty. Here comes a jet alongside of us, right alongside of him, close enough that if I could have took a bow hook and reach out and grab his wing. They gave us an escort up the coast away from there. And then we went from there to Charleston. Spent a year, a year in Charleston. So that would have been 65, we was there. Left from there, went to the Holy Lock and served my time, my 2 years at the Holy Lock. Mechanic by trade through my, before military. I did a lot of mechanic work, so they, you know, had it on records that, you know, I worked as a mechanic before that. So they shifted me right straight into A Division, into small boats, and that's where I served. It was my main job, small boats, Liberty boats, flatbeds, haul material. We did all the, anything that needed to be done with a small boat. Most of it would have been either going over to the other side and picking up materials and stuff to bring back to the ship, or I was on the officer's gig for quite a while. I'd never had the captain's, but then on Liberty boats, we'd take the guys, of course Simon Lake was anchored out in the middle. We used, some of them was just the, some of them had cabins. So we had, you know, both. And then of course we had the cable chaser. That was also at that point turned into a Liberty boat. Of course it went from the Simon Lake across the Holy Lock, or across the Clyde to the Berwick side. So it had to be more sturdy than what we, you know, could haul guys on. Well, of course I had a house or an apartment on shore, but on ship we had our thing, but it was great. I enjoyed it. If it hadn't have been for getting married and wanting to get her settled, I would have shipped over. But with not having time to get her settled before I shipped over, because when we got married in December and I got out in March. During the last 4 months of that, which is what my wife can fill you in, she's a Highland dance professional, but we was having a Kaylee. She used to sing too. But my buddy that ended up being my best man, his name's Bill Bernard. He had a Kaylee at his house, and they were all there, and my wife was there singing and all, and I was there. Well, when his wife took her back to Dunoon, because we was in Stroon, when they went back to Dunoon, he says, "There's a girl for you." He says, I said, "No, she's dating somebody." He says, "So what?" Shortly after that, her and I got together and never dated. She left on vacation. When she came back, I asked her to marry me. It was a great time for me to grow up. I went, like most guys, I dropped out of school, kind of wild, not real bad. Got in an argument with my dad. Went into the military and I loved it. When we first met, a friend of ours had just come back from vacation. Him and his wife were living in the upstairs apartment from where I was, and her sister had came over to Scotland to see them. And her sister wanted to learn some dancing. Of course, my wife can teach dancing, Scottish dancing. So they got together, and then we ended up, they wanted to have a Kaylee, so they got together and had a Kaylee, and my wife was at the Kaylee. It's where you get together and sing and drink and just good fellowship. It was in the evenings, so we had a great time really, singing, and had food and drinks and just had a real good time. So when his wife took Kathy back to Dunoon, he looked at me, and we was cleaning up. He says, "There's a girl for you." And I said, "No, she's dating someone." He looked at me and he says, "So what?" Shortly after that, we got together. We met once or twice before. I went to the store where she was working, really, to buy a pack of cigarettes, which was terrible. But anyway, so just so I could see her. And then I walked her down the town one day when she was leaving for vacation. And when she came back, we went up to her mom and dad's house, and that's where I asked her to marry me.
Well, I was a Highland dancer, and in the summertime when the English would come up to our small town, my girlfriend and I would go to a couple of the different hotels and we'd demonstrate the Highland dancing. So the one week, his friends came to the hotel because the apartment they were staying in was close to it, was outside of Dunoon. And they watched us dance, and then they came over and asked if one of us could help teach her sister some Highland dancing because she already did ballet. At the time my girlfriend wasn't able to do it, so I went ahead and did it, and that's kind of was the beginning of the end for me. Well, back then I was like 17. It was Beatles era, It was a different time, and to be honest, we did not mingle much with the American sailors. Basically, we'd been warned away from them, stay away from the American sailors. So if it hadn't been for me getting with the family that he knew to teach her to do Highland dancing, we would never have met. It just wouldn't have happened, because we had dances every weekend, but the big dance hall we had was, it was almost split in two. There'd be all the locals would be in the front half towards the stage, and all the Americans would be at the back half, and we just, for the longest time, we just didn't mingle that much. Well, we got married. Well, I met him, we got married, and we left to come over here all within 6 months. Came over here, and I mean, we've been married 56 years now. And I ended up teaching dancing over here for 50 years.
Really?
Which I never wanted to do, but there weren't many Highland dance teachers around, so he gave me the nudge, and then he gave me a big push. So, no, I've enjoyed my life over here. I worked for about 38 years, so yeah, it's been good. It's been a good life, but I like to go home and see family still. Well, up until COVID, for about 15 to 20 years, I was going every year while my mom was still alive. She passed away right before COVID, and there wasn't any traveling for a couple of years, so I went home 2 years ago, and then it was 3 years between that. So I guess now we're going to average about every 2 years. I'm getting old. That traveling is kind of hard. It takes a long time. It's a 24-hour trip from beginning to end, so too much.
And then we had our 2 sons, one of which went into the Navy.
Yeah, he served 6 years. So the other one didn't go in, but the oldest one did. And he was hoping that maybe somewhere he'd get posted back on into Dunoon. But they closed the base down, I think, about 91, 92, and that was the end of it. So he ended up in Japan, which he loved. But no, it's been great.